My parents chose my sister's date over my birthday and canceled it completely. What they didn't expect was me choosing to cancel something greater, their house mortgage. I canceled every part of it. Can you imagine being told your 25th birthday party is being canceled because your sister has a date? That's exactly what happened to me. But what my family didn't know was that I was the only thing standing between them and total financial ruin, and I was about to pull the plug on everything. It all started on the morning of September 15th, a Saturday that should have been special. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, the same one I'd been in for 2 years, ever since moving back home to help my parents through their temporary financial difficulties. I was 25, living at home, and secretly the primary breadwinner for a family who seemed to forget I existed most days. As I headed downstairs in our Westfield, Connecticut home, I expected the usual birthday chaos, streamers, my mom's famous chocolate chip pancakes, that special energy. Instead, I found my mother, Linda, meticulously arranging white roses, while my dad, Robert, polished silver that hadn't seen the light of day in ages. "Morning, Mom," I said, pouring myself coffee from the fancy machine I bought them last Christmas. "The flowers are beautiful. Are those for tonight?" She barely looked up. "Oh, Samantha. Yes, these are for Madison's dinner. We want everything to be perfect when Marcus arrives." Marcus Wellington III, the mayor's son. Madison, my 23-year-old sister, had been floating on cloud 9 since he asked her to dinner at the country club. My parents were equally thrilled, seeing all the social climbing opportunities they dreamed about. "That's nice," I replied, my voice a little too flat, waiting for someone, anyone, to acknowledge what day it was. "So, what time should I expect everyone for my party tonight?" The question just hung there. My mother's hands froze on the roses. My father looked up from his buffing. And then Madison appeared in the doorway, already dressed in a cream Chanel dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, a dress I had unknowingly helped pay for. "About that, sweetheart," my mother began, using that tone she always did when she was about to disappoint me but wanted to soften the blow. "We've been thinking, and we believe it would be best to postpone your celebration." I set my coffee mug down carefully. "Postpone it? Just until next weekend," my father quickly added, as if a week's delay made any of this reasonable. "You understand, don't you? Madison's dinner with Marcus is incredibly important. The Wellingtons are pillars of his community, and if this relationship develops..." He didn't need to finish. I'd heard variations of that speech my entire life. Madison was the beautiful one, the charming one, the one who would marry well and elevate the family. I was the practical one, the reliable one, the one working 60-hour weeks in corporate finance and handing over most of my paycheck to keep our family afloat. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," my mother continued, turning back to her flowers with renewed vigor. "The Wellingtons have invited Madison to join them for dinner at the country club, and Marcus wants to bring her back here for dessert. We need the house to be absolutely perfect." Then Madison chimed in, with that sweet, innocent tone that always got her out of trouble. "I'm sure you understand, Sam. You've always been so mature about these things. Besides, 25 isn't really a milestone birthday, is it? It's not like you're turning 30 or getting married or anything important like that." The casual cruelty of her words took my breath away. Not because it was malicious, but because Madison genuinely didn't see anything wrong with it. In her world, her needs always came first. "I've already called the caterer," my mother added, sealing the deal. "They're bringing everything here instead of to the rental hall. The menu will be more sophisticated for Marcus anyway. The caterer I had paid for. The rental hall I had put a deposit on. The birthday celebration I had been looking forward to. Not because I needed a party, but because it represented one day where I might be the center of attention in a family that had overlooked me for most of my life." "What about our guests?" I asked, my voice remarkably steady. "Aunt Carol is driving up from Philadelphia. My college friends took time off work. Jenny even flew in from Chicago. We'll call everyone," my father assured me, waving his hand dismissively. "They'll understand. Family comes first, and Madison's future is at stake here." Madison's future. Always Madison's future. Never mind that I was the one ensuring we had a roof over our heads. I'd spent 2 years watching my parents dote on her while treating me like a live-in ATM. Madison's credit card bills, her car payments, her designer wardrobe, all subsidized by my salary while she worked part-time at a boutique, which was more hobby than career. "The house needs to be perfect," my mother stressed again. "Absolutely perfect. The Wellingtons have such high standards, and first impressions matter so much. Madison, darling, you should go get your hair done. I made you an appointment at that salon downtown. The salon that charged $300 for a cut and style. The salon that would be paid for with money I transferred to their account every month. I watched them orchestrate the destruction of my birthday with the same enthusiasm they'd once put into planning it. I need to make some calls, I said finally. Oh, good, my mother replied, relief evident. I knew you'd be understanding about this. You always are. Can you handle calling the guests? I need to focus on getting everything ready here. I nodded and walked back upstairs. But I wasn't planning to call my guests to cancel. Instead, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. For 18 months, I'd been making their mortgage payments, $3,000 every month, because my father's small accounting practice wasn't cutting it and my mother's library job barely covered groceries. They'd cried, telling me they might lose the house. I'd stepped in, rearranged my life, moved back home, and quietly became their financial backbone. But as I stared at the upcoming automatic transfer scheduled for tomorrow, September 16th, a different kind of clarity settled over me. They wanted to cancel my birthday for Madison's date. They thought my feelings were less important than impressing the mayor's son. I clicked into the transfer settings and paused the automatic payment. Then I opened a new browser window and searched for apartments in downtown Hartford. It was time for some changes. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenny. Can't wait for tonight. Just landed at Bradley. Should I head straight to your house? I smiled as I typed back. Change of plans. I'll pick you up in an hour. We're going to have a very different kind of celebration. Downstairs, I could hear my mother directing my father on where to place furniture, staging our home like a theater set. An illusion of effortless elegance made possible only by my money. But tonight, they would get exactly what they planned for, a perfect evening, focused entirely on Madison. And tomorrow, they would begin to understand what happened when they took the person who held their world together for granted. I closed my laptop and began packing a bag. I had apartment viewings to schedule. I picked up Jenny from Bradley in my reliable Honda Civic, the same car I'd driven for 6 years, while Madison cruised around in the BMW convertible my parents leased for her 21st birthday. Jenny threw her arms around me. Happy birthday, financial wizard, she exclaimed, using the nickname from college. I brought you something amazing from Chicago. As we drove towards Hartford, I found myself telling her the whole story. Wait, she interrupted. You've been paying their mortgage for how long? 18 months, I confirmed. Ever since Dad's business started struggling, and Mom cut her hours at the library to help Madison with her modeling career. Jenny snorted. Modeling career. The girl who did one local department store catalog. The absurdity of it hit me again. Madison had done one professional photo shoot, earning maybe $800 total. But that was enough for them to justify her reducing work to pursue opportunities. Meanwhile, I was pulling 60-hour weeks, building a reputation as the go-to analyst for complex corporate restructuring. What I didn't tell Jenny then, what I hadn't told anyone, I continued to myself, was that I'd been quietly building my own consulting practice on the side. 3 evenings a week and most weekends, I worked with smaller businesses, untangling financial messes. This side practice was born out of frustration with my family. Watching them make increasingly poor financial decisions taught me how many people struggled due to emotional decision-making. So, you're basically a financial superhero, Jenny observed as we pulled into the parking garage of the downtown Marriott. And your family has no idea. That was the crux of it. They saw me as their reliable daughter, there to clean up messes. They had no concept of my professional reputation, my growing network, or the fact that I had been carefully building a safety net for myself while supporting them. They certainly had no idea I'd been documenting every single transaction for the past 2 years, every mortgage payment, every credit card bill, every emergency expense. As a financial professional, I understood the importance of detailed records. As their daughter, I had trusted that documentation would never be necessary. We checked into the hotel and sat in the elegant lobby bar. You're going to tell me the whole story, Jenny declared, raising her glass. Start from the beginning. When did you become the family ATM? It went back further than the mortgage. It started in college when Madison maxed out a credit card our parents gave her for emergencies. I covered the minimum payments. Madison never figured anything out. The pattern was established. Madison creates chaos. Parents panic. I quietly solve it. The mortgage situation began when Dad lost his biggest client. He'd been handling their books for 12 years. He lost 40% of his income overnight. He could have found other clients, I explained to Jenny, if he'd been willing to adapt. But Dad's been doing business the same way for 20 years. He drives a leased Cadillac he can't afford, maintains an expensive office to impress clients, and spends on country club memberships that never seem to generate actual business. What about your mom? Jenny asked. Mom's always been the enabler, I said, finishing my champagne. She works part-time at the library, which barely covers groceries, and spends most of her time in book clubs and volunteer organizations, but she also has expensive tastes. Organic everything, boutique stores, home decor she justifies as investing in property values. So essentially, Jenny summarized, your parents have been living beyond their means for years. And when reality caught up with them, they turned to you instead of making actual changes. Exactly, I confirmed. And I enabled it because I thought it was temporary. Instead, they used my financial support as permission to continue their unsustainable lifestyle. Worse, they extended that lifestyle to Madison, who learned to see money as something that magically appeared. Tell me about Madison's date tonight, Jenny said. What's so special about this Marcus guy? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Marcus Wellington III. His father is the mayor. His family owns half the commercial real estate in Westfield. His trust fund is probably worth more than I'll make in my entire career. Let me guess, Jenny said. Your parents see dollar signs. They see social elevation, I clarified. Mom's been fantasizing about Madison marrying into the Wellington family since the second date. The cruel irony was that my parents had no idea I already moved in those circles professionally. My work at Hartwell brought me into contact with some of the wealthiest families in Connecticut. I had restructured finances for people who made the Wellingtons look middle class. But because my interactions were professional, not social, my parents couldn't see the level of success I had achieved. So tonight, I continued, they're rolling out the red carpet for Marcus. Fresh flowers, good china, probably a menu that costs more than most people spend on groceries in a month. All designed to impress a young man who probably won't even notice the details they're obsessing over. Jenny shook her head. And they canceled your birthday for this performance. They canceled my birthday, I agreed. But they have no idea what else they canceled along with it. I pulled out my phone and showed Jenny an email I'd received that afternoon from a struggling tech startup. The consultation fee alone would cover 3 months of my parents' mortgage payments. I was planning to take this meeting on Monday, I said. But now I think I'll schedule it for tomorrow instead. After all, I suddenly have a free evening. Jenny grinned. I love it when you get that look in your eyes. What exactly are you planning? I raised my champagne glass. I'm planning to give my family exactly what they asked for. A perfect evening focused entirely on Madison's future. But I'm also planning to show them what happens when they take their foundation for granted. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows. In a few hours, my family would be hosting their impressive dinner, using money I had provided. Tomorrow, they would begin to understand the difference between foundation and facade. The first hint that something was fundamentally wrong had come 6 months earlier on a cold March evening. I just saved a restaurant chain from bankruptcy and was looking forward to a quiet dinner. Instead, I found Madison surrounded by shopping bags, trying on diamond earrings that sparkled under a crystal chandelier. Marcus took me shopping, she chirped. The earrings cost $3,200, charged to a credit card I'd unknowingly been covering for a year. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I logged into my parents' financial accounts, where I was an authorized user to manage their mortgage. What I found was a masterclass in financial irresponsibility. Madison had 3 additional cards, totaling nearly $47,000 in debt. A $1,800 handbag, a $2,400 weekend getaway, a $900 facial. But the credit cards were just the beginning. My father's business account showed 2 years of declining revenue, hidden by cash advances and small business loans. My mother's spending had also escalated dramatically, $400 to $500 a week at organic grocery stores, an expensive wine club, premium streaming, a personal trainer 3 times a week. The most disturbing discovery was a file folder in Dad's office. Investment opportunities. Inside were brochures for timeshares, obvious cryptocurrency scams, and an MLM company. He'd invested $12,000 in various get-rich-quick schemes. I spent the next 3 weeks documenting everything. Spreadsheets tracking every expense, every payment. The picture that emerged was devastating. My parents weren't just struggling. They were on a trajectory toward complete financial ruin. Without my monthly contributions, they'd lose the house within 6 months. With them, they were simply delaying the inevitable. But what truly opened my eyes was Madison's career planning folder. Elaborate presentations about modeling prospects, projected earnings that bore no relationship to reality, a $34,000 budget for her first year of serious modeling, and research on plastic surgery procedures, minor enhancements, to be more competitive. The final straw came when I discovered Madison had been forging my signature on financial documents. She'd applied for a personal loan using my credit score, listing me as a co-signer without my knowledge. Thankfully, it was rejected. When I confronted her, her response was breathtakingly casual. "I knew you wouldn't mind," she'd said, filing her nails. "You're always helping with money anyway. I just thought this would be easier than asking." She genuinely didn't understand why I was upset. In her mind, my resources were family resources, available whenever she needed them. The concept that I might have my own financial goals, my own dreams, had never occurred to her. That conversation was in May. Since then, I'd been watching my family with new eyes, documenting not just their finances, but their attitudes. "Samantha will handle it," my mother would say. "Samantha is so good with money," my father would justify purchases. "Samantha doesn't mind," Madison would declare. They weren't just taking my money, they were taking my agency, my identity. I had become a resource to be managed, rather than a person to be respected. The breaking point had been building, but I might have continued enabling them if not for a conversation I overheard 2 weeks before my birthday. Madison was on the phone with her friend Ashley, discussing Marcus. "The timing is perfect," Madison had said. "Mom and Dad are so desperate for me to marry well that they'll do anything to make sure Marcus is impressed. They're already talking about canceling Samantha's birthday party if it conflicts with the date. Can you imagine? Like, anyone cares about Samantha's birthday anyway." Ashley's response was muffled, but Madison's laugh was crystal clear. "Oh, Samantha won't care. She never cares about that stuff. She's too practical to get upset over a party. Besides, this could change our family's entire social status. Samantha should be grateful to contribute to something so important." I stood frozen, listening to my sister dismiss my feelings, my worth, with such casual cruelty. What hurt more was the realization that she was probably right about my parents' willingness to sacrifice my birthday. That night, I called Rachel, a college friend who was a private investigator in Boston. She recommended Patricia Chun, a sharp-eyed woman who was thorough and discreet. Within 2 weeks, Patricia provided a comprehensive report confirming everything I had discovered and more. A second mortgage my parents took out without telling me, loans against Dad's life insurance, behind on IRS payments. "Your family is in serious financial trouble," Patricia told me. "But more importantly, they're in serious denial. These aren't people who are going to change their behavior voluntarily. They're going to keep spending and borrowing until something forces them to stop." I filed her report in my home safe. I had become an expert at saving other people's finances while allowing my own family to manipulate and exploit me. I could restructure million-dollar corporate debts, but I couldn't seem to establish healthy boundaries with the people who were supposed to love me most. Now, sitting in the Hartford Hotel with Jenny, watching the sunset, I finally understood what had to happen. My family needed to learn the same lesson I taught my corporate clients. Consequences are the only thing that creates lasting change. "So what's the plan?" Jenny asked, refilling our champagne glasses. I smiled, feeling a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced in years. "Tomorrow morning, my parents are going to discover that their mortgage payment has been rejected by the bank. They're going to panic. They're going to call me. And for the first time in my adult life, I'm not going to rush in to fix their problem. And then we'll see how important family priorities really are when the foundation starts to crumble." While my family prepared for Madison's dinner, I was orchestrating something far more sophisticated than they could have imagined. Jenny and I spent Saturday evening in my hotel suite, laptops open, spreadsheets displayed, planning what would essentially become a masterclass in strategic financial intervention. "You've been thinking about this for a while, haven't you?" Jenny observed. "Since the moment I found Madison's forged loan application," I admitted, pulling up a detailed timeline. I realized then that this situation would never resolve itself naturally. They needed consequences, not just conversations. The beauty of my plan lay in its simplicity and legality. I wasn't stealing or manipulating accounts. I was simply withdrawing my own financial support in a strategic sequence that would demonstrate exactly how dependent my family had become on my income. The mortgage payment was just the beginning. Over the past 18 months, I had been covering far more than my parents realized. Their car insurance, health insurance premiums, property taxes, Madison's car payment, even Netflix, Spotify, the lawn care service, the cleaning lady. "They think I just help with the mortgage," I said, showing Jenny a spreadsheet. "But I've been subsidizing their entire lifestyle. Watch what happens when I stop." I had already contacted my insurance agent and removed my parents' vehicles from my policy. Effective Monday morning, they would receive notice that their coverage had lapsed. Next, I logged into the property tax system. My parents believed their property taxes were automatically deducted from their mortgage, but that stopped 6 months ago when they refinanced. I had been paying the taxes separately. The next payment was due in 10 days, and without it, the town would begin lien proceedings. "This is brilliant," Jenny said. "You're not hurting them. You're just removing your subsidies. Exactly. They're going to learn very quickly what their actual cost of living is without my financial support. The mortgage payment timing was most crucial. I had deliberately waited until the day after it was due to cancel the automatic transfer. This meant when the bank processed it and found insufficient funds, they would immediately send a notice of default. My parents would have exactly 10 days to bring their account current before foreclosure proceedings could begin. The psychological impact would be devastating. My parents had never missed a mortgage payment. Receiving that first notice would shatter their sense of security. What about Madison's car? Jenny asked. I smiled. Madison's BMW convertible was financed through a lease I had co-signed and been paying for 2 years. She'd violated several terms. 2 speeding tickets, exceeded mileage, minor damage she never reported. I'm not canceling her car payment immediately, I explained. That would be too obvious. Instead, I'm going to let the leasing company discover the violations. They'll demand immediate payment of penalties and damages, plus increased insurance. About $8,000, due within 30 days. If they can't pay, the car gets repossessed. Madison will have to find alternative transportation to her dates with Marcus. I had also been paying for Madison's cell phone, gym membership, subscription boxes, and Amazon Prime. Each of these would be canceled systematically over the next 2 weeks, creating a cascade of inconveniences that would build into a clear picture of exactly how much I had been subsidizing her. The most sophisticated part of my plan involved my father's business. Henderson Accounting Services was hemorrhaging money, but Dad hid this by maintaining an expensive office and professional appearances he couldn't afford. I had been subsidizing these costs indirectly by covering his personal expenses. Through my professional network, I learned several of his remaining clients were considering switching to larger firms, and 2 were behind on payments to him. I've been protecting him from the natural consequences of his business decisions. I told Jenny, he's been able to make poor choices because he knew I would cover the household expenses. Once I stop, he'll have to choose between maintaining his expensive office image and keeping a roof over his family's head. I had already arranged my own exit. My side consulting practice had grown. A tech startup in Hartford offered me a contract position, almost my current salary at Hartwell, with the flexibility to work remotely and build my own practice. You're going independent? Jenny asked. I've been planning this transition for 6 months, I said. I have enough savings to cover my expenses for a full year and enough potential clients to build a sustainable practice. I was just waiting for the right moment. That moment arrived with my canceled birthday party. The symbolic rejection of my value to the family finally gave me permission to prioritize my own future. The downtown Hartford loft-eyed view that afternoon was perfect, close to my new clients, spacious enough for a home office, available for immediate occupancy. The rent was actually less than what I'd been contributing to my parents' household expenses. When do you move? Jenny asked. I can sign the lease tomorrow if I want it, I said. I could be completely moved out by next weekend. The timing was crucial. I wanted to be physically removed from the house before my family fully understood what was happening. I didn't want to be present for the initial panic, the pleading, the attempts to guilt me. I needed distance to maintain my resolve, but I also wanted them to have time to process. If they responded by cutting expenses, finding additional income, and treating me with respect, I would consider resuming limited assistance. If they responded with manipulation, blame, and demands, I would know permanent separation was the only healthy option. What about Madison's dinner tonight? Jenny asked. I checked my watch. It was nearly 7 o'clock. Marcus Wellington III would be arriving soon. Tonight they got exactly what they wanted, I said, closing my laptop. A perfect evening focused entirely on Madison's future prospects. Tomorrow, they start learning about consequences. I'd even planned a small gift, a bottle of expensive champagne delivered to the house with a note. Congratulations on prioritizing what matters most. Love, Samantha. My parents would interpret it as gracious acceptance. They had no idea it was actually a farewell gesture. Jenny raised her glass. To strategic planning and natural consequences. To finally putting myself first, I replied, feeling lighter than I had in years. Sunday morning arrived with a jarring buzz of my phone at 6:04 a.m. I was still in the Hartford Hotel suite, having enjoyed a peaceful night's sleep for the first time in months. Then my mother's panicked voice shattered the quiet. Samantha, thank God you answered. We have an emergency. The bank called saying our mortgage payment was rejected. There must be some kind of mistake with the automatic transfer. Can you check your account and fix this immediately? I sat up slowly, deliberately taking my time. Through the hotel window, the early morning sun cast long, golden shadows across the city. It felt symbolic somehow. The dawn of a new chapter. Good morning, Mom, I said calmly. How was Madison's dinner last night? The dinner was wonderful, but Samantha, this is serious. The bank is saying we have 10 days to bring the account current, or they'll start foreclosure proceedings. This has to be an error. You've never missed a payment. You're right, I replied, walking to the window. I have never missed a payment, but I also didn't make this month's payment. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear her shocked breathing. In the background, I heard my father's urgent questions. What do you mean you didn't make the payment? She finally whispered. I mean exactly that. I canceled the automatic transfer yesterday morning. The payment didn't happen because I chose not to make it. But why? Is this about your birthday? Samantha, I know you were disappointed, but this is our house. You can't just stop paying the mortgage because you're upset about a party. The fact that she still didn't understand was both infuriating and clarifying. This wasn't about a canceled birthday. It was about years of being taken for granted, exploited, and treated as a financial resource rather than a family member deserving of respect. Put Dad on the phone, I said, and put me on speaker. We need to have a family meeting. I heard rustling, then my father's voice, strained with panic. Samantha, what's going on? Your mother says you didn't make the mortgage payment. That can't be right. It's completely right, Dad. I also canceled your car insurance, which expires tomorrow. The property taxes are due in 9 days, and I won't be paying those either. Madison's car lease has some violations that need to be addressed immediately, and her cell phone service will be disconnected on Tuesday. The explosion of voices was immediate and overlapping. My mother asking how I could do this. My father demanding explanations. Madison in the background, crying about her phone and her car. The chaos was exactly what I'd expected, but experiencing it felt strangely liberating rather than upsetting. Let me explain something to all of you, I said, raising my voice to cut through their panic. For the past 18 months, I have been covering approximately $4,800 per month in your expenses. That includes the mortgage, insurance, taxes, and various other costs that you've either forgotten about or never realized I was handling. $4,800, my father repeated, his voice faint. Every month. I have detailed records of every payment, every transfer, every bill I've covered. I also have documentation of the additional $47,000 in credit card debt that Madison has accumulated, the failed business investments you've made, Dad, and the loans you've taken against the house without telling me. I heard Madison gasp. How do you know about my credit cards? Because I'm listed as an authorized user on the accounts where the bills get paid. Because I'm a financial analyst who notices when $3,200 diamond earrings appear on statements. Because I've been subsidizing your entire lifestyle while you all pretended I was just helping out occasionally. My mother's voice was shaking now. Samantha, even if you're upset with us, you can't just stop paying the mortgage. We'll lose the house. You might lose the house, I agreed. That depends entirely on the choices you make over the next 10 days. You could get second jobs, sell some of Madison's expensive purchases, take out a loan, or ask your wealthy new friends for help. You have options. You just haven't needed to explore them because I've been enabling your poor financial decisions. This is crazy. Madison's voice cut in. Now you're being vindictive and cruel. All because we postponed your stupid birthday party. That casual dismissal of my feelings, even in the middle of a financial crisis, was the exact confirmation I needed. Madison, I said, my voice deadly calm. Your car is going to be repossessed within 30 days unless someone pays $8,000 in penalties for the damage you've caused and the terms you violated. Your credit cards are maxed out on accounts that I've been paying minimum balances for. Your phone, your gym membership, your subscription boxes, all canceled. Your modeling career fund that you've been building with other people's money, that ends today. You can't do this to me. Marcus is taking me to dinner at the country club next weekend. I need my car. I need my phone. Then you need to figure out how to pay for them yourself, or ask Marcus for help, or get a full-time job like most 23-year-olds. My father tried a different approach. Samantha, I understand you're angry, but let's be reasonable here. We can discuss changes to our arrangements, maybe set up a formal loan structure with interest payments, but you can't just pull the rug out from under us without warning. Without warning? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dad, I've been warning you for 2 years. Every time I suggested you find new clients instead of depending on my support. Every time I recommended that Madison get a real job instead of pursuing fantasy careers. Every time I pointed out that your expenses were unsustainable, you ignored every warning because it was easier to take my money than to make difficult changes. I could hear them conferring, trying to figure out how to handle this crisis. The irony was perfect. They were finally having the urgent financial planning conversation they should have been having for years. "What do you want from us?" my mother asked finally. "I want you to learn to solve your own problems. I want Madison to understand that actions have consequences. I want Dad to either make his business profitable or find employment that covers his expenses. I want all of you to treat me like a family member instead of an ATM. And if we do that, you'll start helping again," my father asked hopefully. "Maybe. Or maybe I'll decide that it's time for me to focus on my own future instead of constantly rescuing you from yours. I've accepted a new job, Dad. I'm moving to Hartford, and I'm starting my own consulting practice. For the first time in my adult life, I'm going to prioritize my own goals." The silence that followed was heavy with shock. They had never considered the possibility that I might have my own ambitions, my own life to build. In their minds, I existed primarily to support their dreams. "You're moving out," my mother whispered. "I'm moving on," I corrected. "There's a difference. You can reach me at this number if you need to discuss truly important matters. But the era of me solving every problem and covering every expense is over." "Samantha, please," Madison said, her voice now desperate. "I'm supposed to see Marcus again tomorrow night. I can't show up in Dad's old Honda." "What will I tell him?" "You could tell him the truth," I suggested. "That your family has been living beyond your means and you're learning to be more responsible. Or you could ask him to pick you up. Or you could take an Uber. You have choices, Madison. You just haven't had to make them before." My father cleared his throat. "What about the mortgage payment? Even if we accept everything else you're saying, we need time to figure this out. Can you just cover this month while we make arrangements?" "No," I said simply. "You have 10 days to bring the account current. You have the same options that any other family in a financial crisis would have. You can ask relatives for help, take out a personal loan, sell possessions, or find additional income. The only thing you can't do is expect me to continue enabling your irresponsible choices." I could hear crying now, my mother's tears, Madison's sobs of frustration. But I also heard something else. My father's voice, quiet and thoughtful, as he began discussing actual solutions with my mother. For the first time in years, they were talking about cutting expenses instead of finding ways to increase their income through my contributions. "I love all of you," I said, meaning it despite everything. "But I won't sacrifice my future for your comfort anymore. You have 10 days to figure out the mortgage. Everything else gets resolved as you're able to manage it. I have confidence that you'll find a way. You just haven't needed to try before." I ended the call and immediately turned off my phone. Outside, Hartford was fully awake now, bustling with Sunday morning activity. For the first time in years, I was about to join them. Jenny emerged from the bedroom with 2 cups of coffee. "How did it go?" "Exactly as expected," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Panic, blame, desperation, and a complete failure to understand why I'm done enabling them. Any regrets?" I considered the question, looking out at the city that was about to become my new home. "None at all. For the first time in my adult life, I feel free." By Wednesday morning, the Henderson family's carefully constructed world had begun to collapse in spectacular fashion. I was in my new Hartford apartment, surrounded by moving boxes, setting up my home office. Jenny had stayed to help, and we were unpacking kitchen supplies when my phone started buzzing with messages. I turned it back on for business calls, but the flood of texts from my family painted a vivid picture of their rapidly deteriorating situation. From my mother, "Insurance company called. Cars aren't covered. Can't drive Madison to work. I need help immediately." From my father, "The bank wants $3,047 to bring the mortgage current plus late fees. Don't have it. What do we do?" From Madison, "My phone got shut off in the middle of a call with Marcus. This is humiliating. Fix this now." But the most revealing message came from my father's business partner, Tony Ritchie. "Samantha," Tony said when I returned his call, "I need to talk to you about your father's financial situation. He's been borrowing money from the business account to cover personal expenses, and now we can't make payroll." This was news to me. "How much has he borrowed?" $18,000 over the past 6 months. He kept saying it was temporary, that his daughter was helping with family finances and he'd pay it back soon. But now he's saying you've cut him off. Frankly, the business can't survive this kind of drain. I felt a chill of realization. My father hadn't just been mismanaging his personal finances. He had been stealing from his business, using my mortgage payments as justification for his theft. "Tony, I had no idea about any of this. My father never told me he was taking money from the business." "Well, he needs to return it immediately, or I'm going to have to dissolve the partnership and report the missing funds. I've got 3 employees who depend on their paychecks." After hanging up, I sat in my new living room, staring out at the Hartford skyline, processing the full scope of my father's deception. My phone rang again. This time it was Marcus Wellington III himself. "Miss Henderson?" His voice was polite but confused. "This is Marcus Wellington. I believe I've been dating your sister, Madison." "Yes, I know who you are," I replied, curious. "I'm calling because Madison asked me to contact you about some financial difficulties your family is experiencing. She seems to think you might be able to help resolve some issues with her car and phone service." I almost laughed at the audacity. Madison had actually asked her new boyfriend to call me. "Marcus, I appreciate you calling, but Madison's financial problems are her responsibility to solve. I'm no longer involved in managing my family's expenses." There was a pause. "I see." Madison gave me the impression that this was some kind of temporary misunderstanding between siblings. "She said you were just upset about a birthday party." Madison has a tendency to minimize complex situations. The reality is that my family has been living beyond their means for years, and I've decided to stop enabling that behavior. "Ah!" Marcus' tone shifted. "That puts things in a different perspective." Madison mentioned that her family was well established financially. I gather that's not entirely accurate. I think you should ask Madison to be more honest with you about her actual circumstances. She's a lovely person, but she's never had to face real financial responsibility. After we hung up, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sympathy. Marcus wasn't looking for a charity case. Madison's deceptions were catching up to her. The next call came from my Aunt Carol in Philadelphia, who was staying with my parents to help manage the crisis. "Samantha," Carol said, her voice tight with stress, "I need you to understand what's happening here. Your parents are in complete panic. Your mother hasn't stopped crying. Your father is talking about declaring bankruptcy. Madison locked herself in her room and won't come out. What about solutions?" I asked. "Are they taking any practical steps? Your father went to 3 different banks trying to get a personal loan, but his credit is apparently much worse than anyone realized. Your mother called everyone she knows asking for money, which was humiliating for her. Madison applied for full-time jobs at 6 different places yesterday. This was progress. For the first time in years, my family was facing reality. Carol, they're doing exactly what they should be doing. These are the steps they should have taken years ago. But Samantha, they could lose the house, your childhood home." "That's possible," I agreed. "It's also possible they'll find a way to save it. But either way, it won't be, because I sacrificed my future to enable their poor decisions." Carol was quiet for a moment. "I have to ask, are you really prepared to let them lose everything?" "I'm prepared to let them face the natural consequences of their choices. If they lose the house, they can rent something smaller. If Madison loses her car, she can take public transportation. If Dad loses his business, he can find employment. And if they hate me for this, then I'll know that their love was conditional on my willingness to bankrupt myself for their comfort." That evening, I received an unexpected visitor. Madison appeared at my apartment building, looking disheveled and desperate. The doorman called, and after a moment's hesitation, I agreed to see her. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt, not her typical designer outfits. Most tellingly, she had obviously been crying. "Can I come up?" she asked in the lobby. Of course. We rode the elevator in silence. When we reached my apartment, Madison looked around with obvious surprise at the modern, sophisticated space. "This is really nice," she said quietly. "Thank you. I've been saving for my own place for a long time." We sat in my living room, and for several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, Madison broke the silence. "Marcus broke up with me today." I felt a pang of sympathy. "I'm sorry. What happened?" "He said he didn't appreciate being misled about our family's financial situation. Apparently, when his parents found out that our house might be foreclosed on, they told him he should date someone from a more stable background." Madison's voice was flat, defeated in a way I had never heard before. "He was right to break up with me. I did mislead him. I've been pretending to be someone I'm not for so long that I forgot who I actually am." This was not the conversation I had expected. "Madison, you're 23 years old. You have time to figure out who you want to be. But I don't know how to be responsible. I don't know how to live within my means. I've never had to try." She looked at me with something approaching respect for the first time in years. "How did you learn all this stuff? How do you manage money and plan for the future and make it look so easy?" "It's not easy," I told her. "Honestly, it requires discipline and sacrifice and making choices about what's truly important. But it's also incredibly freeing to know that you can take care of yourself." Madison nodded slowly. "I applied for a full-time job at a marketing company today. The salary is only $32,000, but they said if I work hard, I could advance pretty quickly. That's a good start. I also listed all my designer clothes and jewelry on consignment websites. The woman at the shop said I could probably get about $15,000 for everything, maybe more. I felt a surge of pride for my sister. These were exactly the kinds of difficult but necessary decisions she needed to make. What about Mom and Dad? I asked. Madison's expression darkened. Dad told Tony Ritchie that he'll pay back the money he borrowed, but he has no idea how. Mom is talking about selling her jewelry and maybe getting a full-time job for the first time in 10 years. They're both angry at you, but they're also starting to realize how much you were doing for us. Are you angry at me? Madison considered the question seriously. I was. For the first few days, I hated you. I thought you were being cruel and vindictive. But then I started thinking about how I would feel if someone treated me the way we've been treating you. She looked directly at me. We've been terrible to you. We took your money, your support, your sacrifice, and we never even said thank you. We just expected it like it was something we deserved instead of something you chose to give us. It was the most honest and mature thing I had ever heard my sister say. I don't hate you, Madison. I never did. I just couldn't continue enabling behavior that was hurting all of us. I know. She stood up to leave. I don't know if Mom and Dad will ever really understand what they did wrong, but I'm going to try to do better. Starting with paying my own bills and cleaning up my own messes. After she left, I sat in my apartment, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope for my family's future. Not the future I had been financing, but the future they might build for themselves. 3 months later, on a crisp December morning, I was preparing for the grand opening of Caldwell Financial Solutions when my phone rang. My mother's number. I almost didn't recognize her voice when I answered. Samantha, it's Mom. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. The tentative, respectful tone was completely different from the demanding panic I had heard in September. Something fundamental had shifted. Not at all, I replied, setting down promotional materials for my new office space. How are things going? Better than I expected, actually. I wanted to call and, well, there are some things I need to tell you. Things I should have said months ago. I settled into my desk chair, looking out at the Hartford Business District, where I had built my new life. We saved the house, she said first. It took everything we had, and we had to make some major changes. But we brought the mortgage current with 2 days to spare. How did you manage that? Your father sold his Cadillac and bought a used Toyota. I sold all my jewelry except my wedding ring and my mother's pearl necklace. Madison contributed $12,000 from selling her clothes and accessories. And, she paused, her voice catching slightly, I took a full-time position at the regional library system. I'm now the head of their adult literacy program. I felt a surge of genuine pride. Mom, that's wonderful. You always love that work. I do love it, and the salary is much better than I expected. Between my income and the money your father is finally making from his business, we can actually cover our expenses without. She trailed off. Without my help, I finished gently. Yes. And Samantha, I need you to know how ashamed I am that it took losing you to make us realize what we had been doing. We weren't just taking your money. We were taking your life, your dreams, your future. We treated you like a resource instead of our daughter. It was the apology I had been waiting to hear for years. But now that it had come, I found myself more focused on the changes she was describing than on my own vindication. What about Dad's business? That's actually going really well. Losing the partnership with Tony was devastating at first, but it forced your father to completely restructure. He moved to a smaller office, started using modern accounting software, and began offering virtual services to clients outside of Westfield. His revenue has actually increased by 30%. This was genuinely surprising. He adapted to digital services. My mother laughed, and I could hear real joy in it. Madison taught him. She's been working as his part-time marketing coordinator while she finishes her business degree. Did you know she enrolled in night classes at the community college? I hadn't known that. What's she studying? Business administration with a focus on digital marketing. She says she wants to understand how money actually works instead of just spending it. She's completely changed, Samantha. She's working 40 hours a week at that marketing company, going to school 3 nights a week, and she's been saving money for the first time in her life. The transformation sounded almost too dramatic to believe, but my mother's voice carried conviction. She's been dating someone new, my mother continued. A teacher she met in one of her business classes. He drives a 10-year-old Honda and lives in a small apartment. And Madison says she's never been happier. She told me that Marcus Wellington was attracted to what he thought our family represented, but David likes who she actually is. We talked for another 20 minutes, and with each update, I felt layers of old resentment beginning to dissolve. My family hadn't just survived the financial crisis I had created. They had used it as an opportunity to build something more authentic and sustainable. "There's one more thing," my mother said as our conversation began to wind down. "We'd like to invite you to Christmas dinner. Not because we need anything from you, but because we miss you. Because you're our daughter and we love you. And because we want to show you the people we've become." "I'd like that," I said, meaning it completely. After we hung up, I sat in my office, thinking about the journey that had brought us all to this point. The dramatic confrontation that started with a canceled birthday party had forced my entire family to confront fundamental truths about responsibility, respect, and authentic relationships. My own transformation had been just as profound. Caldwell Financial Solutions had grown from a side practice to a thriving consultancy with 12 regular clients and a waiting list. I specialized in helping people navigate financial transitions, divorces, career changes, family crises, entrepreneurial ventures. My reputation for combining technical expertise with emotional intelligence had spread. More importantly, I had learned to set boundaries and prioritize my own needs without guilt. My apartment in Hartford had become a home where I felt genuinely comfortable and secure. I had joined a hiking club, taken up pottery classes, and started dating a fellow financial consultant. For the first time in my adult life, I was living for myself while still maintaining the capacity to help others when I chose to do so. The irony wasn't lost on me that my family's crisis had ultimately benefited everyone involved. My parents had discovered strengths and capabilities they never knew they possessed. Madison had learned to value authentic relationships over social performance. My father had modernized his business and found new success. My mother had returned to meaningful work that utilized her education and passions. And I had finally claimed the independence and respect I had been unconsciously seeking for years. On Christmas morning, I drove to Westfield for the first time since moving out. The house looked smaller somehow, but also warmer and more welcoming. There were no expensive decorations, just simple, thoughtful touches that reflected my family's new appreciation for what they could actually afford. Madison answered the door, and I almost didn't recognize her. She looked healthy and confident in a way that had nothing to do with designer clothes or perfect makeup. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair in a simple ponytail, and she was genuinely smiling. "Samantha!" she exclaimed, hugging me tightly. "I can't wait for you to meet David. He's in the kitchen helping Dad with the turkey. Fair warning, they're both terrible cooks, but they're having so much fun trying." The scene in the kitchen was exactly as Madison described. My father and a pleasant-looking young man in his late 20s were attempting to coordinate a holiday meal with enthusiastic incompetence. "Samantha!" my father called out, wiping his hands on an apron that read "World's Okayest Cook," clearly a gift that reflected his new, more realistic self-assessment. "Come settle an argument. David says we should baste the turkey every 30 minutes, but the recipe says every hour." "Every 30 minutes," I said, accepting a hug from my father that felt different than any embrace we had shared in years. There was respect in it, gratitude without desperation, and genuine affection not complicated by financial obligation. Dinner was imperfect and delicious. The turkey was slightly dry, the mashed potatoes lumpy, but the conversation was rich with stories about their new ventures, challenges overcome, and plans for a future they were building together. David was thoughtful and funny, with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are. He and Madison clearly adored each other, but their relationship was based on mutual respect and shared values, rather than social ambition or financial convenience. "Madison tells me you're the one who finally taught her family about accountability," David said during dessert. "That must have been a difficult decision." "It was necessary," I replied, "but I never imagined it would lead to such positive changes for everyone. Sometimes people need a crisis to discover what they're really capable of," my mother said quietly. "We certainly did." As the evening wound down, my father pulled me aside. "Samantha, I need to say something that's long overdue. What I did to you, taking your money, your support, your sacrifice for granted, was wrong. Not just financially irresponsible, but morally wrong. You deserved better from us. And I'm sorry it took losing you to make me understand that. Thank you for saying that, Dad. I also want you to know that we're not going to ask you for money ever again. Not because we're proud or stubborn, but because we've learned that depending on you was preventing us from becoming the people we needed to be." He handed me an envelope. "This is our first payment toward repaying what we owe you. It's not much, only $500, but we're committed to paying back every dollar you spent supporting us with interest." I looked at the check, feeling emotions I couldn't quite identify. "Dad, you don't have to." "Yes, we do," he interrupted firmly. "We absolutely do. Not because you need the money, but because we need to make this right. because debts should be repaid, and because our relationship with you should be based on mutual respect, not financial obligation. When I left that evening, I carried with me something I hadn't expected to find: genuine hope for my family's future and real affection for the people they had become. 6 months later, I received another envelope from my parents. This one contained not just their monthly payment toward the debt, but also a birthday invitation. Not for Madison this time, but for me. "We'd like to throw you a proper birthday celebration," my mother had written. "Nothing elaborate or expensive. Just family and friends celebrating someone we love and respect, if you're willing to trust us with planning it." I smiled, thinking about how far we had all traveled from that September morning when my birthday had been canceled for Madison's date. The woman who had orchestrated such a dramatic intervention felt like a different person now, someone who had been trapped by her own enabling patterns and had needed to break free as much as her family had needed to learn independence. Now looking back, I could see that canceling their mortgage payment hadn't been revenge at all. It had been the greatest gift I could have given my family, the opportunity to discover their own strength, capability, and authentic happiness. And in the process, I had given myself the greatest gift of all, a life that was finally completely my own. What about you? Have you ever had to draw a really hard line with family to get them to see the truth? Or maybe you've been in my family's shoes and had a wake-up call. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to hear what you think.